The nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I will be your host for today's Nonprofit MBA podcast, as I have been for the last 6 years. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm co-founder of Financing Solutions, and for the last 14 years, since 2012, I think it is, we have been the leading provider of lines of credit to small nonprofits. And I've always enjoyed doing these podcasts. We have so many great guests. I just think you can learn so much from them. And if you're interested in getting a line of credit for your nonprofit, it's a very popular product. Please visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Leslie Smith from McCormick LA Public Relations. Since founding McCormick LA Public Relations in 1994, Leslie has written dozens of marketing and promotion plans for local nonprofits and businesses, both big and small. She has orchestrated grand openings, groundbreakings, product launches, and social initiatives that have landed her clients on the front page of daily newspapers and on network news. As a trained facilitator, she has helped leadership teams and volunteers align their vision, refine their strategy, and tackle pivotal challenges with a unified approach. She has taught a nonprofit marketing certificate program since 2011. And I'd like to welcome Leslie to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah.
So Leslie, today we're going to be talking about, public relations and marketing. Do you find that nonprofits that are smaller, like under $5 million in revenue a year, pay attention to marketing and public relations?
Probably more so, because the larger ones are often part of a national brand, a United Way, or even to a degree a YMCA or Boys and Girls Club. But I've worked with those local regional entities of those as well. But the smaller ones know that they really have to work hard to make sure that people understand what they do and their place in the community and the impact that they're making for them to compete with the larger dollars for things that are known nationwide, right? I mean, there's lots of very small organizations, maybe with budgets of $20,000 or less, that are making things work for them and making the impact on a very hyper local level, and still very important to the people that they serve and very relevant. So yes, and they will pay attention. They almost have to do more, right? So they get it. But it's been interesting over the years, because I have been working with nonprofits for so long. It used to be epidemic that every nonprofit would just, if they had a development director, that's who did their promotions. Or if they didn't have a development director, they weren't doing too much. Like maybe the executive director might issue a press release for an event or something. And it was not a priority. When social media came along, that's where I really saw the shift, because then it was recognized something they didn't know how to do. And so they realized they had to delegate money to that, allocate money to that. And they would do the intern route, but the intern's there 3 months and then leaves with the passwords, right? So they really needed to invest in that. And that's where I've seen more organizations create a marketing director or a media relations coordinator or something like that. So they have somebody on staff who's really doing that, or a volunteer. They can do it either way.
Tell me what the value is to the nonprofits for doing PR.
Well, if they don't do it, so here's the thing, right? So marketing is our umbrella term. And then under that is your product, your price, your place, and your promotion. Then I like to divide promotion into advertising and PR. So if you don't have money for advertising, then you're going to rely on that PR piece. I listened to your podcast from the Arts and Scraps from
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, and she was awesome. And she talked about community engagement. That's PR. And so she said that's not really traditional, but it is traditional public relations to get out there. And there's immeasurable positive benefits to that. So if you're a small nonprofit and the organization that you can afford to go to once a month for a luncheon is the Chamber of Commerce, do that. Go to those things so you have one-on-one conversations with people. You don't know who they know. They may be on the board of a community foundation that says, we'll give you $5,000 or $10,000, or they open your eyes. Like, the port gives, money every year to a lot of events of nonprofits of any size. Why don't you apply for that? It's like a one-page application. Doesn't hurt, right? You might as well try. And making those connections and building those community ambassadors, very, very beneficial. So if they're not doing that, they really need to. Most nonprofits will do that because they're feisty and determined, right? That's who starts nonprofits. They're married to a cause. They want to see it go. And they say, who do I need to know? And so most of them will do that community engagement without calling it their PR plan, without calling it their community engagement.
Yeah, it's amazing
plan.
when you just said go to the Chamber of Commerce and get to know people and talk to people, and you're right, that's PR.
Right. It's PR. Sending a thank you note.
I wouldn't even
is
thought
PR.
of it. I would think, I would have thought, okay, we got to produce a press release. We got to get it out to the local newspapers. We got to get it on the internet. And we got to, maybe even getting it out to our constituents. That's PR, but you're right. PR is spreading the word, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
I always
building
think of
that network. Yeah.
I always have had a knack for PR, I felt. And I think the word that I would use for PR is let's say a couple words, a multiplier effect.
Sure.
For the amount of money you put into it, the amount of effort that you put into it, the amount of return is multiple of
Right.
the amount of work you put into. Is that something that
Yes.
you have found too?
Absolutely. So I like to tell my students in my class and my clients, advertising's an anchor, right? It's very, it's heavy, right? It's what you can do. You define it. It's going to look a certain way, everything. It's your paid persuasion. So you've dictated where it goes, how often it goes, all of those kinds of things. PR is a cloud, right? So it's much more nebulous. It's about creating a friendship with your constituents. So they know you as that. And so when you start talking about your branding messages, you want people to talk about you in the way that you're portraying, right? And so you live up to those branding messages and being very clear about that your product is really self-assurance, or your product is really peace of mind. Those kinds of things come through when you're treating people in alignment with that out and about in the community. Even if you participated in like a health fair or a tabling event, which are very common, and then following up with the people, that shows them something. And maybe they met 100 people that day, but if you're the one or one of 10 that followed up with them, they're going to remember that. Like, it was so nice to meet you. Here's what we do again. I know you met a lot of people you might not have remembered, but here's what to remember about us. We love referrals from X, Y, and Z. Call me up if you ever have time for a coffee.
So let me give you a scenario. You have an executive director. He or she does not have a marketing person. They do have a staff. They may or may not even have someone who's in charge of fundraising. And they're listening to this podcast right now, and they're saying, I don't even know where to begin with we don't do any press, PR. We don't do any press releases. We don't do any outward bound type of, things that would be considered PR. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure we haven't exactly convinced people yet, but if they're listening, it's been on their agenda. Where would you say the best way to start is to start getting a PR campaign going?
Sure. So first, I'd say take some time with your staff or your board and really nail down those foundational pieces. So first, be very clear what is your product, right? And so, we get mission creep all the time, especially in COVID. There was a group they supported in-home childcare people, but they were teaching people how to use their Chrome tablets. Like, that's not your mission. They had to, learn everything to answer all the questions. Okay, so go back to your mission so people know what you do, right? And so be very clear about that product. Then what is your pricing strategy? Most nonprofits try to be free, but sometimes there is a fee. Just be very mindful of what that means. If it's fee free, then do you have a steady, sustainable way of generating income? And I love the idea of line of credit. I think you're a genius. And then deciding that place. Where are you offering this product? Is it mobile? Is it in your brick and mortar? Is it virtual? And then are you where your constituents can get to you easily? There was a nonprofit, they were far away. Oh, we'll just give them bus passes. The kids would lose the bus passes. The kids they'd miss the bus broke. They said, forget it. So they moved downtown and because that's where all their people were coming from. They're like, this is dumb. We need to be where they are. So make it easy, right? So be very purposeful in those decisions, then get to the promotion. Okay. So then once you've gone through those things, it becomes more obvious. Like, okay, well, we want to do a tabling event at the park downtown because we've identified that's the best place for us. Gosh, there's all these things happening at the downtown library. What can we do? Does that align with us? Is that where our people are? And then it becomes very simple. And I wrote this, a perfect time to mention. Thank you for the segue. I wrote a 50-page book that's for nonprofits or small businesses. And I took Newton's laws of motion and made it the laws of promotion. So it's very simple. I took it from a workshop I used to do years ago. It's the most unintimidating marketing book you can imagine. There's drawings, there's fill in the blanks, there's some downloads that you can do. It's very simple. You could take this to your board and fill this out together. And the reason I did this was there wasn't a good book to refer to people. When I talk to people, they're like, well, we don't have any money for that, Leslie. What can you do? And sometimes I'll come in and help them get started on some things like, what are your overall objectives? Or, point out maybe some issues that I see just looking at their website. But I'm like, they just need something, even to send them to, Marketing for Dummies is like a 200-page book. And it's full of jargon and things that they don't understand. And they're not supposed to. Like, I don't know how many times in my class when we first started this in 2009, I'm like, tell me what your role is. And we'd go around the room. I'm the box office manager of this arts group. I'm a therapist. I'm the executive director. It's like, okay, so this is what they're all doing their marketing in the margins, right? And so without a real plan to enact, and this gets you started, right? So it gives you a really strong foundation, and then you can start, and then from there you can build a plan. So it doesn't give you a complete plan, but it does give you pointers on creating some objectives, how to do that, how to scale. Because the second law of motion is force equals mass times acceleration. So for this purposes, force is how much promotion do you need? Mass is how big is your business? And then the acceleration is those dictated in your objectives. How quickly do you want to achieve such and such, whether you're fundraising or finding more customers, clients, whatever, or grow, any of those kinds of things. So it's obvious, right? When you start thinking about that way, Disneyland has to do a lot more promotion than the school carnival, right? So, and that's where a lot of people get overwhelmed is they think, well, we're going to social media and this person has, 10,000 followers. We need 10,000 followers. It's like, what are they going to do? Right? So what are 10,000 followers going to do for you? Are you asking them all to give you $5? Because that could be 50 grand if they all acted, which is unlikely, right? Or are you asking them to send you clients? Because can you handle 10,000 clients, 10,000 referrals? And they don't have the infrastructure for that. So it's just a vanity goal. So you back up, look at what you're trying to do before you get into those tactical goals and, KPIs. Like, well, if we have this many followers, then we'll have this. Well, you're conflating two issues that are not really related. It doesn't mean anything. It may just mean that their friend who's very, very popular was in one of your posts, right? You don't know why that they followed you.
Yeah, I like the idea of using your book, and I've done this before, where I use a book and we work as a team in my company to just do what the author says.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea of not, because understanding the positioning of your nonprofit is so important. When you look at the success of very successful nonprofits versus the ones that have failed, what you notice is how well defined and who they know who they are. They know who their constituents are. They know what they're trying to accomplish. They know how they're going about doing it. And what you also notice is that they say no so much more than saying yes. They're very disciplined. So the bigger you are, the more disciplined you are. And what smaller nonprofits need to know is how to do that.
Right.
And and I think the parts of the book that you're telling me about right now is extremely helpful, because when we first started doing this podcast, I was like, oh, okay, well, create a press release once every quarter and get it out to the newspapers, right? That's an easy start, right? But that's not where you want to start, right? That may not even be one of the goals. Right. You kind of want to, and then you mentioned Instagram and social media, and then the followers on that. And again, we're talking about the idea of multiplier effect.
Mm-hmm.
For every dollar you put into PR, you should get $10 back out of it. And who doesn't want to do that? Yeah. Well, that's best case scenario, right?
And it may be long term, right? It doesn't work right away. It's a cloud, right? So it may drift over here and stuff comes up, unpredictably, right? So
yeah. And I think too, it's amazing when you start this project and you think it's really PR related, and how much it affects every part of your organization. It affects, right? If you, by doing the positioning statements, you find out in fundraising who really you should be targeting. You find out a narrowing of your cause, and how who you can affect from your from your cause standpoint. It's just that these type of exercises that you think are going to lead you toward marketing tend to really help you in other areas of your organization that you weren't expecting. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. Yes. It goes through everything. And that's one of the things, that a mistake that I see a lot of nonprofits make, is that their marketing isn't aligned with their mission and vision. They really need to keep that in mind. And so, they moved it, we call it sort of a pyramid, right? So you have your vision, which I try to define of, because of us, here's the outcome. That's your vision. Because of us, the world's a better place in whatever way. And then your mission, how you do it, who you serve, those kinds of things. And then you have, your belief systems and all of those kinds of good things. And then you get down to some goals that are pretty broad and mirror your vision, right? So we're going to have lots of this and this and this, right? And then you get into your objectives with those specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timed. And then you do your strategies there, and then your tactics, and then your resources. Like, what resources will you have? And it goes up and down. So your resources will dictate how you implement those tactics. Everybody loves social media because it's free, right? So let's do lots of that. But then when you learn that the algorithm is only letting 2 or 3% of your followers see each post, you're like, okay, so maybe we'll boost that post, and we'll buy some ads. Still very cheap, right? But if your messaging isn't spot on and you don't have a really clear call to action, it may just be wasted money. But when you go through all of these things, and then, part of your resources are your personnel. And so if you have some of your tactics are very much about being out there and talking about things, and you have very shy people, you need to make a shift. How is that shy person going to go out and do speaking engagements, go out and speak in front of the Rotary group, or, go pitch a story to a newspaper, all of those things? How is that person going to feel comfortable doing that? And can we train that person, or should we just find somebody who can do those things for us, either contractor or hire? So it all becomes intertwined, right? It all builds on each other, and it's all very integrated. And sometimes you'll get some of you down in the objective level where they say, okay, we want to do this, but we want to save money. So then the tactics become something that's on the cheap. And then you go, that doesn't match the mission. Like, so, we're a women's crisis center. And so we want to raise as much money as we can, and we want to find people who are going to donate their services to us. And then you end up having an event because somebody's donating the space, but it's at a, I don't want to say strip club, but that would be the most obvious bad place for them aligning with their mission, right? And this sounds exaggerated. However, I've seen many women's crisis centers, like one of the contributing factors to that is alcohol abuse, right? And substance abuse leads to domestic violence. And they'll have a league or some fundraising arm will do a wine tasting on their behalf. Like, let's rethink this, right? That's not really aligned with their mission. And then you have people, you talked about being disciplined. And I think that discipline comes from being refined, right? In these larger organizations, they've been around longer, and they've had experts refine until they say, no, that doesn't work. We know. So you have these younger nonprofit professionals say, how do we tell them that we don't want that? Because we want their money. Like, well, you bring them in, you educate them. They don't know. They are well-meaning, and they think their friends, enjoy a wine tasting. And so wouldn't that be fun? But you have to say, hey, we're going through this marketing process, and we've realized this doesn't align, and we're worried about the image of our brand out there if we're promoting alcohol in any way, shape, or form. So could you instead do a lemonade tasting, a guacamole contest, which somebody did in the community, which was very fun, or, pancake breakfast, or, just a walk, anything else that's away from alcohol for these purposes. And they'll 100% will oblige, right? They're really married to the cause, or married to the cause more than they are to the wine. You just have to be nice about it, right?
The booklet that you have, is that booklet geared more toward marketing and PR is a part of that, or is it geared toward PR?
It's marketing. So
yeah,
it's that umbrella marketing piece, because it goes through those 4 Ps: the product, price, place, promotion. That's like the first part of it. And then it breaks it. So in fact, here it is: product, price, place, promotion. Just sketch it out. Right. And for sometimes I have these nonprofits in the classes that have a million services, and, they work with people through their lifespan, from, infants to elderly. And so I'll have them sort of break it up, because that's too much for one person to oversee all the marketing. And they're one person taking the class, and, maybe they have a team. Take the program and deal with that as the product, and run through that, because they will have differences. If they have something that's working with infants to 5-year-olds, that's going to take place someplace else than their program that's for elderly, right? Or, their food delivery for elderly or something. That's going to be different. It's a different model. So then they can marry that, and then make sure that their branding messages are all resonating through all of that, and that the look and feel of their, flyers and promotions are all the same, all their branding's on point, but still hitting other audiences. Like for one of my nonprofit clients, it's children, but the, mommy and me class is different than the teen class, but we have a uniform flyer, and the colors just change depending on what age group we're dealing with. Right. So you can do things that way, manipulate things that way. And their logo has 10 colors in it. So we just pull colors from that, so it's still uniform with the logo. right, across the board.
I love case studies because I think you learn a lot through case studies. Let's talk about maybe one of the clients I don't need to know their names unless you want to give them out. But let's say they came to you, or they were in maybe one of your marketing classes, or they ordered your book, or they brought you on as a consultant. I like the rags to riches scenario, where if you have something like that, where someone came in, they really weren't doing anything. They didn't have their positioning down, and then they implemented what you talked about, and that transformed the organization. And then you saw them 2 or 3 or so years later, and how they transformed. So do you have somebody like that in mind that you can think of that came to you, was really behind, hadn't really done any of the marketing end of the work, and then transformed?
Sure. I can think of 2 they're teeny, right? So but they're on the uptick. First was they're both music groups, but one's instruments and teaching that to teens, and then they go out and I did this pro bono because I knew a couple of their board members. They just needed to. They weren't on the same. The board wasn't on the same page. So the executive director felt like he was constantly going back and forth. And so we just spent a Saturday morning retreat sort of thing and went through aligning everything, and then going through in small group work. I think there was 10 people in the group, and did some small group work, and they each tackled a different area, membership, fundraising, and I don't know, personnel or something, and wrote some objectives, put it up on, the big sheets on the board, just went through that, and it put them on the same page. They could see clearly their direction, what they wanted to do, and they're jamming. They have more students than they can keep up with. They do excellent performances, places. People pay them to come to things. They've just taken off, and they just needed that alignment. The other group is a chorus, and teeny, under $20,000, grew out of a church group. And I was paid to do a marketing plan with them from a grant that was given to our nonprofit partnership. So the nonprofit partnership's a consortium. That's who I teach the classes through. And there was a youth-focused foundation, gave money to them for small grants for the nonprofit partnership to choose who, they were like $2,500 or something. And so I worked with them. It was in COVID. So they sort of fell apart, right? If you're singing after school or on Sundays after church, and now there's none of that, how do we move forward? And so then when they were coming out, they had to completely rebuild. And so working with their board and their staff on Zoom, actually went through the whole thing, wrote a simple simple marketing plan, because they're not, it's not complicated, right? They have one product. And they were pretty good about, they had a good email list on those kinds of things. And that's worth everything. Get anyone from your social media on your email list, because that's what you own. So that's a little tip. If you learn nothing else, create that list. So they would, send things out, but then without the kids, there wasn't a lot to support. So they rebuilt. We worked through some, tactics that they hadn't thought of before, some different promotional tactics. And now I think and then they participate, and we have a day of giving in the city where everybody, promotes themselves. Over 300 nonprofits take part, and they raise extra money in that. And so their budget has slowly grown, and they've gotten recognized for different things. In fact, so people hire them to do things, which that was not really happening as much before. They sang a jingle for one of my other clients, which was spot on. It's great. They performed at a recent gala for a youth group. So they did some of that, but I think they're doing more of that now. So they're growing. Gotcha. And just more clear, just, really gaining that clarity, and then, create the plan and trust the plan. Because otherwise every month you're going, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
It's like, just do it. It's front loaded. It takes a little bit more time, but then you just have to follow the plan. It makes it super simple.
And I bet you they're a lot happier now too. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he built his board up. That was one of the things too, is that he needed more people on the board, and he found someone who was already really well connected in the community. And so she was able to bring other board members in too. So
gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I really enjoyed today's podcast. I thought it was very informative. I think, the key here, takeaway, is probably to download Leslie's pamphlet and book. And I'll have it in the show notes as well on how to do that. But Leslie, if people want to get a hold of you or download that book, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. So they can get everything on my website. It's mccormickla.com. And I just am launching some classes now online. So, and you can go to the classes and books resources tab would be where you'd want to go. And there's links to the books. And then it's in English and Spanish. And then also to the newest class that I'm launching called Boost. So That'll be on there too. Yeah.
And so McCormick is spelled McCormickla.com.
Yes.
Just so the website is right there. And so I just like to thank again so very much Leslie Smith from McCormick LA Public Relations for coming on today's podcast. And if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting apps. And if you like today's podcast, please give us a 5-star review to help us get the word out. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your nonprofit, please feel free to give us a call at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And I'd just like to thank all our listeners, not just for listening, but really for trying to make the world a better place. We really need you. Make sure, though, that you're always taking good care of yourself first, because you're no good to your employees, your family, your kids, your cause if you don't take good care of yourself first. So please keep that in mind as you continue to save and solve the world's problems. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Stephen.